Alright, the last bit that I want to show you here is about layers and properties. Now, we discussed a little bit about the properties when I was just showing the, oh, not here, sorry, when I was going through the hide other layers, hide objects on the base layer. That's actually the other we're going to do. So, for instance, we discussed that we were going to pause this layer here at the Q point because we wanted other information. So here we have an opportunity to not only show a bit of, I don't know, content that was broken up, but also we could add different things here, as it's pretty clear you could probably click on these. So to do that, I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to call that Fade 1. And I'm going to go ahead and call that Fade 1, but I want to go ahead and also click this box so I can see where things are. I'm going ahead and let's just do some really quick stuff here. So I'll just do a box, put that on there, maybe make it gray, no outline, and maybe let's see, I'll do another one just to kind of mix things up and show you some grouping. Do another shape here. Got that lined up really nice. And I'll do my standard orange also with no outline. So there you go. And I'll use this orange here as my title box. So what am I calling this? Info piece 1. And I'll bold that, make sure it's white, plop it off to the side, put it in there. I'll do the same here. So this is where all the So I have that. I could also make this look just as nice. Pop it there and align it. So there we go. So now I have 2 bits of information. And I also want to maybe put something on here where I can hide the background a little bit. So I'll put another shape on there just so it doesn't get a little overwhelming. And I'll just put a box on there. Here's what's interesting. So I can go ahead and I can make this anything I want. I'm going to make it black. But I want to set some transparency to that. And there's no real, in Captivate it was right there in a properties panel. I mean, I could add some effects to all this stuff and do the fill and everything, but there's no clear cut and dry where the heck is the transparency for this. And that's the weird thing about Storyline. Let me just go ahead and put this in the back before I begin. Is you have to right click on that and almost treat it like in PowerPoint. I got to find that format shape. Click on that format shape, and there right away by default you see that transparency comes up. And I'm going to pull that back to about 35-ish. So there you have it. Now I have this coming in and that. So now I have 3 pieces of information. And I don't want them all coming in separately and all that stuff. So what I can do, just like we did in Captivate as well, is select, so these 2 items, I'm going to go ahead and select those and group it. See, I grouped it, I plopped it up here so I can change it. Info 1. So now I have an option that I have a grouped piece here. I can still add an animation to that, which I'm going to do. I'm going to fly that in, make it come in from the right, so that'll plop in this way. And then this gray, I want it to kind of, excuse me, not the gray, but now the background here, I want that to fade, just kind of show off a little bit there. So there you have it. Now I have another layer, and I'm going to go ahead and click on here, and let's see, I'm going to add a state to that too. Oh, looks like I already did, visited. So yeah, I added a state to that, called it visited, and there you have it. I don't think I did it to the rest of them. I did not. So I was prepped for this one. So just add a state, and I went with what I usually do. Just did like an orange so you know that it was visited. But I do need to show the layer, because of course I'm going to have this layer, and then I'm going to click on this number 1 to show my Fade 1. So trigger, we know how to do that. Just click on my new trigger and say show layer, and I'm going to pick Fade 1. When user clicks, rectangle, so there you go. Obviously didn't name it, but we're okay. The only thing that's really going to happen here is I'm going to click on this, and our new layer is going to show, right? All right, let's see what happens. Preview this slide. There she comes. I'll click my fade. There we go. Click on this new, so you can see it's clickable because of the finger. I'll click on this new bit, and oh goodness. So yes, my layer did show up, which I wanted, but my other layer disappeared. And that is because by default, Storyline allows you to just have one layer at a time, almost like a block item. And that is cool because it makes things like what we did here very easy to do, right? We didn't have to say open layer, close layer, hide layer, show layer. All we had to do was click on this, and then consequently when we clicked on step 2, step 1 went away and then step 2 showed. So it was a really nice feature that we could do. So in this case, we don't want that. We want both layers to be showing at the same time. And that's what you do in that properties panel. So way over here in this little properties jobby, I'm going to click on that, and then you see my options here are by default to hide other slide layers, which is helpful in a tabbed interaction. In this case, we don't want that, so I'm going to uncheck the hide other slide layers and then hit OK. So now when I preview this, here she comes. I can click fade. Now when I click on this layer, that remains, and then so does my new layer. So we're good to go, except now we're stuck in here. As you can imagine, like we've discussed a million times, there's 100 ways to do 5 different things in this whole entire module. We are not going to do much of that. Because basically you have an option here. So I want this layer to close away. Easiest thing to do, we've done it a million times, is just to add a button, right, and just say close. So in this case, all we have to do now is just, in our new trigger, is just say hide layer. This layer when you click buttons. You can do that. Makes perfect sense. All we want it to do is go away. You could also put it in different spots, down here if you wanted, on this close button if you wanted. But in this case, now that we can close this so we can get to the other areas, like we know we want them to hit number 2 and number 3, so that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and preview this now. So now I know when I go to fade, I have 1, 2, 3. I can click on 1. I can see everything comes out here. There's nothing I can do, so I'm going to close this. Now I have an option to go to 2 and go to 3, or I can just close this and move on to the other sections. The other thing that I want to show you specifically as it has to do with properties and slide settings is you see here that I've clicked on these, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I've already been there. But if I were to replay this, and let's say I clicked on my fade, I did my thing here, yeah, close it, and then I clicked on grow, which it's not set, but you know that I have my state, so it's going to work. But then I hit next. Oh, man. Hang on, I didn't do that right. Stand with me. I have to preview the whole thing. Real quick, got to get through this. Boom. Yeah, good. Okay, so here we are. So say I'm here and I'm doing all this stuff and I click on fade, my fade layer comes up, I do all my things, and click along, I get through 3 of them and I'm like, oh, the next button. And I realize that it worked. Now I want to go back. You can see that it starts over from scratch. My progress is gone. So it doesn't look like I've actually done anything in this area. And in this case, it doesn't really matter, right? Like we could just go to wipe and everything would be fine. But as we get later on, we're going to talk about badging and how a lot of these need to be satisfied before you earn a badge or before the next button clears. So what we need to do now is, again, go to the slide layers. So it's this one. So we find out where these buttons are, and they are on our base layer, right? So in this base layer, what we want to do is go to slide properties, and you can see that it says slide advances by user, which we know that because we have previous index, but then it says when revisiting. And that's exactly what just happened right now. By default, I think it's set to automatically decide or something like that. But if it's set to reset to initial state, which there's going to be times you want that to happen, in this case we do not, that means everything goes back to 0. But if we go to resume save state, that means if we had gone through 3 of them, left, and came back, it would show that those 3 were selected, visited already, and that is done because of our states, right? Because we have this selected and or visited state. So now, because I changed that, and you can do the same, and I'll show you here in a second, you can do the same here. So of course I have states here, where it's going to be 2 and 3 will have the same. I do have the opportunity in this properties to do the same thing. It says when revisiting, you see here it is set to automatically decide. Well, we can say resume save state on that as well, just in case we want them to leave here and come back. So now when I preview this, remember I set it to resume save state. I'm going to move it along here. It'd be great if this just jumped for me. I don't know why it would, but you never know. Okay, we're good. Now I hit next. Now I'm right here back, got my animation coming along, yada yada yada. So I'm going to click fade, I'm going to click this, I'm going to close it, I'm going to close it. So I've been there, it's visited. I go to grow, been there, visited. Now I'm going to go to next. Oh darn it, I want to go back. Now you can see that the animation doesn't start because it's already happened, and then these are set to visited already. So I know, just based on the content, things that I've done, that I can just click on through the rest of these, and then that'll just remain that way as you see fit. So that is slide properties. What I'd like you to do in your exercise is not only have a fade layer show, right, that has everything going on here with the cue, but I'd like you to have a grow, flying, and wipe. Do your best if you want to duplicate the layer, whatever it is you want to do, but just get used to using that cue point, get used to adding the animation. Then I'd also like you to add this layer, so this fade 1, depending on which one you picked, it doesn't have to be the fade layer, but please add a fade 1, fade 2, and fade 3, whereas 2 layers are showing at once. And that is all. That is all.